Gibson doesn't actually sell guitars anymore. Hey everybody, Jace Allen here, welcome back to the channel. The Gibson Guitar Company was started in 1902 by Orville Gibson in Kalamazoo, right here in my home state of Michigan. It was originally called the Gibson Mandolin Guitar Manufacturing Company Ltd. And as the name suggests, they started out making mandolins. It is said that Gibson invented the archtop guitar, patterned after a violin's archtop. Later, as guitars began being electrified, Gibson, of course, began manufacturing electric guitars. Of course, we all know they partnered with musical pioneer Les Paul, and thus the Gibson Les Paul was born and released in 1952. So Jace, how can you say that Gibson doesn't actually sell guitars? That's because although Gibson manufactures and sells guitars, what they are actually selling is nostalgia, a lifestyle, an image. Think about Gibson's guitars. The Gibson Les Paul was released in 1952. The Flying V was released in 1958. The Explorer was also released in 1958 along with the ES-335. The ES-345 was released in 1959. The SG was released in 1961 and for a time was meant to replace the Les Paul, actually being named Les Paul until it was ultimately changed to SG. Gibson experimented with various designs that were similar to guitars they already made in the early 80s with varying degrees of success. Gibson hasn't really released any new guitar designs since, really, the SG in 1961. In fact, the latest new guitar design that Gibson released was the Theodore in 2022, but that was based on a guitar designed by Ted McCarty. Guess when? 1957. Noticing a pattern here? That's right, Gibson designed its best-selling guitars over 60 years ago. And really, not much has changed about them in all that time. A Gibson Les Paul now looks pretty much like it did when it was released in 1952. That year, Chevy was selling the Style Line Deluxe. A great-looking car even to this day, but can you imagine if Chevrolet kept this same car design for over 60 years? So what's going on here? Well, it's pretty clear that Gibson isn't really selling guitars anymore. There are so many other guitar brands out there, many with far more innovative and modern designs and features. What Gibson is selling is nostalgia. They are selling an image. They are selling a lifestyle. If you were born in 1950, today you are 75 years old. The age at which you would have been just thinking about picking up the guitar is when some of Gibson's most iconic guitars were being released. Maybe you never got the chance to own a Gibson. Now that you're retired, maybe you have a few extra dollars of disposable income and now are able to buy a Gibson guitar. I'm 54 years old, born in 1970. For me, the Fender Stratocaster was the guitar I coveted. It wasn't until later in life that the Gibson Les Paul and SG models started to appeal to me. The guitarist Slash is a well-known Gibson player, as well as Kirk Hammett and Joe Bonamassa. Kirk Hammett is now 62 years old, Slash is 59, and Bonamassa a young 48. Noticing another pattern here? Yep, Gibson players are getting up there in age. Gibson hasn't exactly done a great job attracting young players to their iconic Les Paul. According to many things that I've read while researching for this video, younger players tend to gravitate towards Fender, Ibanez, and the PRS brands. The Gibson SG, on the other hand, does seem to resonate with some younger players, usually those in the blues and rock genres, like for example Grace Bowers. There are lots of videos on YouTube about this very topic. I'll put some links in the description. Last year, Gibson released a Jimmy Page double-necked 1969 Gibson SG model that would only set you back about $50,000. You heard that right, $50,000. It is clear that Gibson is marketing to an older crowd that has a lot of money and holds a great deal of nostalgia toward their brand. In fact, their latest marketing campaign, is a very blatant attempt to continue to capitalize on that sense of nostalgia. Remember in the movie Back to the Future when Marty McFly, played by Michael J. Fox, plays Johnny B. Goode at his parents' high school dance in 1955? In the film, Fox is playing a modified Gibson ES-335 that actually wasn't available until 1958. The images of Marty duck walking across the stage and leaping off his guitar amp are classic. Well, Gibson is banking on you remembering this moment in cinematic history and also hoping you'll open up your wallet. Just yesterday, Gibson has announced that the iconic Gibson ES-335, played by Michael J. Fox in the original Back to the Future movie, is indeed missing. And they want anyone out there in the world that may know where it is to contact them. There was a huge media blitz about the search for the original Back to the Future guitar from Guitar World magazine, Guitar Player, Rolling Stone magazine, Gibson themselves, BackToTheFuture.com, and even YouTubers like Trogley's Guitar Show. In fact, Gibson has even created a website called LostToTheFuture.com where they are putting out a call to find this lost instrument. If you visit the website, you'll notice something interesting: a countdown at the bottom of the screen. At the time of this writing, it is at 4 months, 17 days, 13 hours, 33 minutes, and 30 seconds, which, when the countdown completes, will put it at October 21st, 2025. In the original movie, Marty and Doc are in the Twin Pines Mall parking lot on October 26th, and Marty travels back in time to November 5th, 1955. So what does October 21st have to do with anything? Well, in Back to the Future 2, Doc, Marty, and Jennifer travel forward in time to October 21st, 2015.
When are we?
We're descending toward Hill Valley, California at 4:29 p.m. on Wednesday, October 21st, 2015.
2015? You mean we're in the future?
Since that date, the day has become known as Back to the Future Day. The original movie was released on July 3rd, 1985, making this year the 40th anniversary of the motion picture. So what does all this have to do with Gibson? They're being pretty tight-lipped about it, but my guess is Gibson will be releasing a replica model of the Back to the Future ES-335 used in the original movie. And I'm also guessing that the guitar will come with a futuristic price tag as well. It's a pretty ingenious marketing scheme if I ever saw one, but once again, proof that Gibson are no longer selling guitars, they are selling nostalgia. So what happens to the Gibson brand when my generation passes on? Eventually, Gibson will need to begin appealing to younger players. My guess is the Les Paul will become somewhat of a relic as younger players avoid the model and move toward lightweight, more affordable models like the SG or the Les Paul Jr., or even the Epiphone brand. So what do you think? Is Gibson just selling an image or a lifestyle? Are they capitalizing on nostalgia to keep their brand relevant? What do you think about this marketing tie-in with the 40th anniversary of Back to the Future? Do you think Gibson is actually going to release a Back to the Future model ES-335? Let me know in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.